to identify oral cavity, you can see the teeth in the tongue, know what they do. You don't need to know specific teeth, but you should have an idea of what the teeth do, how they aid in digestion. So oral cavity with the teeth and tongue. Here in the thoracic cavity, this muscular tube that lies behind the trachea, we know this is the trachea because one, you can see cartilage rings. It's more sturdy because of this cartilage rings, and it lies anterior on the anterior side of the esophagus. The esophagus is posterior to the trachea. So this muscular tube is the esophagus. The esophagus is going to lead the bolus from the oral cavity to the stomach. It runs along the back, the posterior side of the thoracic cavity. It's going to enter through the diaphragm, remember the diaphragm, and then it's going to enter into the stomach. So right under the diaphragm, this huge, it takes up, kind of is shaped with the diaphragm, this huge multiple-lobed organ. This is the liver. You peel that up and you can see this huge sac-like organ called the stomach, okay? Sandwiched in between the lobes of the liver, that balloon-shaped organ, not all of them have to be green, but sometimes it will stain depending on the concentration of the bile. This is the gallbladder, sandwiched in between the lobes of the liver. Peel the liver away. Again, this is the stomach. All of this fatty tissue attached to the greater curvature. This is the greater curvature of the stomach. This is the greater omentum. It's lots of loose areolar connective tissue with fat embedded in it. It lies on top of the abdominopelvic cavity. It's to cushion, also store energy, just like adipose does everywhere else. But because we don't have any sort of bones like the thoracic cage surrounding the abdominopelvic cavity, we have this greater omentum to help cushion and protect the organs. On the lesser curvature of the stomach, right here, all of this fat tissue embedded in the lesser curvature, that would be the lesser omentum. Greater omentum attached to the greater curvature, lesser omentum attached to the lesser curvature. Here on the left-hand side of the abdominopelvic cavity, this large organ that kind of runs parallel, like with the spine almost, this long organ, this is the spleen, okay? This is the spleen. And the small intestine, once you see the small intestine come off of the stomach. So here's where the small intestine begins. This is the duodenum. So if I ask a region, if I'm asking the small intestine and it's right next to the stomach, what would you tell me? Duodenum. Okay, so right here, this is the duodenum because it's coming directly off of the stomach. And if you look at all of this kind of spider web stuff that holds all of the intestines together, that's all called mesentery. And if you look at the mesentery right below the duodenum, all of that grainy stuff embedded in the mesentery, that's the pancreas. So it doesn't look like how you would think an organ looks, but it's all of that grainy stuff embedded in the mesentery right below the duodenum, which makes sense because it empties its contents into the duodenum. If you have the liver right above the duodenum, that makes sense because it empties its contents into the duodenum. Gallbladder sandwiched in between. Again, all of this being in close proximity makes sense, and you should know that because we looked at the duct system just a few minutes ago. So that's all pancreas embedded in the mesentery right below the duodenum. If I ask small intestine and it's just kind of in the middle, not near the stomach, not near the large intestine, what region would you tell me the small intestine? What region? Jejunum, right? Because you have duodenum, which is right off of the stomach, and then the middle portion, which is the jejunum, and then the ileum is right before the large intestine. So if you follow these small intestines around, and I get to this region right here. So here, you can see a size discrepancy, right? Between the intestine at this point and the intestine at this point. This is much larger, so this is the large intestine or the colon. You could call it either or, right? In the cats, you don't have an ascending, transverse, and descending colon or large intestine like you do in the humans. They just have one descending colon, okay? Or descending large intestine. This area right here, see this area, it kind of looks like a C. This C-shaped portion leading into the large intestine, this is the cecum. Cecum, right? This is where the ileocecal valve would be embedded. That separates the ileum from the cecum and then into the large intestine. So if I ask a region of the small intestine and you can see the cecum right next to it, what would this be? Ileum. Because the ileum is right before the large intestine, okay? So if I ask small intestine, but it's close to the stomach, duodenum. If I ask small intestine, but it's in the middle, it's not close to the stomach, it's not close to the cecum, you would say jejunum. If I ask small intestine and it's right next to the cecum, this would be the ileum. This is the cecum, and then it leads down. This is the large intestine, which would lead to the rectum and then the anal canal, which you can't identify on the cats. Everything that I went over on the cat is fair game on the cat. Everything that I didn't is still fair game, but on models, slides, diagrams, etc. Okay? All right?